Hello, we are going to talk about the CAGED system. So we're going to do a brief overview of what the CAGED system really is, and then we're going to do an example in the key of D major and G major so that you can play along and you can see exactly what's happening in the CAGED system. So the CAGED system is really a way for guitarists to look at the guitar, to really just see the instrument and to make sense of it. Often musicians study what's called music theory, but for guitar, guitar is a somewhat strange instrument in terms of the way it's laid out, and so we also want to study fingerboard or fretboard theory as well. And so there are many different methods to go about doing this. I think that they're all very valuable, have learned many myself. However, I think the CAGED system is the easiest for people who've never used any kind of system to look at the guitar neck and to quickly be able to put some stuff together so that they can start playing all over the neck, both chords and scales, as well as arpeggios and phrases. You can use the CAGED system really to practice anything that you're interested in practicing on the guitar. So the CAGED system is this idea of using 5 forms of chords, okay? So we have these 5 forms, and the 5 forms themselves are based on chords that we already know. We know the open chords, C, A, G, E, and D, all right? And what we're going to do with those 5 chords is we're going to first turn them into movable chords, where you would play any of the notes that you would normally play on open strings. You're now going to bar, usually with your index finger, to cover those notes. And in that way, we're able to then move up and down the guitar neck using the same chord shape to play in a variety of keys. The CAGED system also allows us to play multiple chord shapes to represent one chord. So for instance, if you were to choose the D major chord, using the CAGED system, you can find very quickly 5 different places to play the D major chord on the guitar neck. So in that way, it's useful because it allows you, again, to experiment and to move up and down the guitar neck in a fluid way and to start to see it in a much more general sense. We can also use the CAGED system as a method for practicing and learning scales and arpeggios and other elements of music. And in this case, what we can do is we can assign a scale form to each of the chord forms that we're using within the CAGED system. So for our C form in CAGED, we have a C form major scale, for example. We also, for our A form in the CAGED system, we have an A form major scale. For G, we have a G form major scale. For E, we have an E form major scale. And for D, we have a D form major scale. And again, what this really allows us to do, why it's so powerful, is we've established that there are now 5 different places or 5 different ways that we can play the same scale. So I'll go back to my example of D major. The key D major, you can play the D major scale, just like the chord. You can play the D major scale all over the guitar neck. Right? Scales are cyclical. They start and end in the same place, and they just keep going up and down. And so in this way, we'll be able to see how the various components of the guitar neck, which is confusing, are connected together. I can also show you and will show you some ways in which you can quickly develop finger speed and fluidity playing scales, again, across the entire guitar neck, by using some tips and tricks from the CAGED system to establish those scales and to play them. All right? So right now we're going to take a look at first D major in the CAGED system, and then we're going to look at G major in the CAGED system. It's worth noting that in the CAGED system, the chord shapes I'm discussing are all connected together. So as you move up the fingerboard, you grab onto a different chord shape, and they're all connected as you move across the fingerboard. And they're connected in the order of the word CAGED. So if you were playing a chord down here that was a C form chord, for instance, then your next chord would be an A form chord. and your next chord would be a G form chord, so on and so forth. And just like how scales in music in general is somewhat cyclical, we can think about it as a cycle, D would then lead to C. So it's like C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, and it just kind of goes on, up and down the guitar neck. All right, so let's take a look at D major and G major.